Hey everyone, John here from Cast and Spear, and today we have a very special guest. His name is Johnny Harvill, and he's one of the team members at Cast and Spear. You've probably read some of his articles on the site. I wanted to make sure that I brought him on the podcast so that he has a chance to kind of share his backstory in fishing, what's it like growing up in Alabama, and even a special little treat, how he likes to cook up bass. All right, stay tuned. Let's get started.
My dad started me fishing when I was old enough to walk. There were a couple of private-owned ponds that I can remember going to in the area that we lived in, so we went fishing at least a couple of times a month. When we wasn't fishing at those ponds, we went to the creek and fished for bass and catfish or just about anything that would bite. I remember my dad had bought an old van that he converted into a weekend camper to take to the river. He would load the family up and we would go to the Tennessee River and fish for catfish. He had a gas stove that he would set up on the bank of the river. After we cleaned the fish, he would cook them and we would just eat right there on the bank. We usually stayed the night and came home the next day. During that night, we would fish for the larger catfish that most normally feed at night. We caught some pretty big ones back then. I can't imagine how big some of them in the river actually were that we didn't catch.
Now that you know a little bit of Johnny's backstory, let's jump into the conversation where he talks about how he likes to cook what he catches.
Catching and cooking is probably one of the best parts of fishing, in my opinion. Here in the South, we fry just about everything, particularly where I'm from here in Alabama. So my process for cooking bass is to deep fry them. First, we clean them. We simply just descale them and leave the skin on, because that's where the majority of the flavor is when it comes to bass is in the skin. When I get the fillets cleaned, I like to soak them in salt water. This actually gets salt all the way throughout the fish and can tenderize them. If they're larger fish, they might be a little bit tough. While the oil is heating, I use vegetable oil. I like to get my cornmeal and flour and salt mixture together. That's all we use for batter, and it's just simply a couple of cups of cornmeal, a couple of tablespoons of salt, and a couple of tablespoons of flour. Depending on how much salt that you put in the water that you're soaking your fish in, or how salty you like them, you can either leave the salt off in your batter, or you can back it down just a little bit. But we want to make sure that we always use enough oil to completely cover the fish once you put it in. Once I get the oil good and hot, and you can test it by putting a little bit of water on your fingertips and letting it, drizzle over the oil. And if it's really starts sizzling, then you'll know that your oil's hot enough. I batter each fillet in the cornmeal mixture and then drop them in the oil. Depending on the thickness of your fillet, it shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes, and you really don't have to turn them over because they pretty much float in the oil. You want to make sure that you have enough oil in there to cover them, and this is part of the reason why. You'll know they're done when they begin to float, and you can, if you're using something like a set of tongs to lift your fish in and out of the oil, which is what I use, you can squeeze the fillet just a little bit, and if it sizzles, it may need a couple of more minutes. If it doesn't, then it's ready to take out. And at that point, we have a plate lined with paper towels, and we put the fillets on the paper towels to let them drain. Usually when we cook fish this way, as a side, we fix hush puppies, French fries, coleslaw, and homemade tartar sauce. It usually, there's way more left over than what we can eat out of just a few fish, so a little bit actually does go a long ways.
Well, I don't know about you, but growing up in California, I sure didn't get any of that fried Alabama bass goodness. But that's about to change. I'm going to have to go visit Johnny over in Alabama and have the full experience. So tell me, have you ever had fried bass? And if you have a favorite recipe, please share it with me at castandspear.com/contact. I would love to try it out myself. And that does it for this episode. Keep those lines tight, everyone. Cheers.